Hi everyone, my name is Gemma Love and I'm a Supported Engagement Officer with the school feeding charity Mary's Meals. I'd like to start by thanking you all so much for having me along today. We really appreciate all of the amazing support that we get from everyone there at the ICE. Your kindness and generosity really is changing the lives of so many children across the world, but especially at your sponsored school in Liberia, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later on. So for those of you who have never heard of Mary's Meals before, I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be here to tell you a bit more about our story today. So like many good stories, the story of Mary's Meals started in a pub. So back in November of 1992, two brothers, Magnus McFarlane Barrow and Fergus McFarlane Barrow, were sitting having a pint together in their local pub in Dalmally. And their conversation turned to a news scene that they'd seen that day, showing the suffering of people in Bosnia who'd fled ethnic cleansing there, and they were currently housed in refugee camps. The brothers felt really compelled to do something to support these people, so they decided to appeal for aid around their local community, and they hired a van and found themselves traveling to Bosnia with all of the aid that they'd collected. So barely 3 weeks after the conversation that they'd had in the pub, they had been to Bosnia and they returned home. But they were amazed to find when they returned home that their father's old shed was just full to the brim with donations from the community. So Magnus then decided to take a gap year to continue to deliver this aid. And it was the longest gap year ever because he never actually returned to his job as a fish farmer. So in 1992, the Magnus's work was officially registered as a charity, and the charity was named Scottish International Relief. So we'll fast forward now to 2002, when Magnus was visiting Malawi, and at the time Malawi was experiencing a really awful famine. And when he was there, Magnus met this lady called Emma that you can see in the photo here. Emma was sitting surrounded by her 6 children. Emma unfortunately was dying of AIDS, and her husband had already died of AIDS as well. And Magnus wanted to lift the atmosphere in the room, and he asked Emma's oldest son, Edward, that you can see in the photo here, Edward, what are your hopes and ambitions for the future? And it was Edward's reply that really shaped what Mary's Meals is today. So Edward said to Magnus, I would like to have enough food to eat and I would like to go to school one day. And Magnus felt like this was a call that just couldn't be ignored. And so this statement led to the evolution of Scottish International Relief into what Mary's Meals is today. So hunger remains the #1 health risk in the world today. Tragically, hunger kills more people every year than AIDS, malaria and TB combined. About 200 million children's lives are at risk because they're malnourished in the world today, and more than 64 million primary school-aged children are out of school around the world. So instead of sitting in classrooms, children are working in fields, begging on street corners, scavenging amongst rubbish to find enough food just to survive. So today, too many children will wake up and go to bed hungry. And at Mary's Meals, we don't think that this is right. That's why I'm here speaking to you today. Our vision at Mary's Meals is that every child receives one daily meal in their place of education, and that all those who have more than they need share with those that lack even the most basic of things. Working together with those who share our vision, we believe that there's no good reason why this can't be realised. At the heart of Mary's Meals, there's a really simple idea which can transform the lives of millions of children all around the world. Providing a child with one daily meal and a place of education not only feeds the child's body, it helps feed their mind too, and provides families with a greater incentive to enrol their children in school. We believe that education is essential and to break the cycle of poverty. Children receiving Mary's Meals today can grow up well educated to become the men and women who can lift themselves and their own communities out of poverty and end, that reliance on aid itself. Mary's Meals is now feeding hungry children living in 20 different countries all across the globe, where we're reaching some of the world's poorest children who don't have any other safety net. Mary's Meals it's not only a powerful incentive to come to school, this daily meal also gives children the energy that they need just to do things like playing. When Mary's Meals starts at a school, our research shows that hunger is reduced. There's improved school enrolment and attendance levels. There's improved attainment, increased community support for education itself, and children are just generally happier. So we're also now beginning to see a new generation of people who were once fed with Mary's Meals. We refer to these people as Generation Hope. So these are young people who have completed their education and are going on to do amazing things, like become doctors or teachers or even professional athletes. And at Mary's Meals, we work extremely hard to keep our running costs low and to ensure that at least 93% of donations go directly towards our charitable activities. This is only possible because most of our work is done by an army of dedicated volunteers who carry out little acts of love on behalf of Mary's Meals. So our school feeding programs are owned by community members, owned and run by the community, with Mary's Meals providing the food. And it costs just £15.90 to provide a child with a meal for a whole school year. So that works out at just 8p per meal. So now I'm going to chat to you a little bit about Liberia, and very importantly your sponsored school there, Fefe Town Public School. So you'll see a map of Liberia here on the right. In case you don't know, Liberia is a country on the West African coast. It's bordered by Sierra Leone, Guinea and the Ivory Coast and the Atlantic Ocean. And it's got a population of around 5 million people. Liberia has 15 different counties and 41% of Liberian children go to school. Mary's Meals is currently feeding 144,000 children in Liberia at 614 different schools in 4 different counties. More than a decade has passed since the end of Liberia's civil war, but all forms of infrastructure across the nation, which the UN actually ranks as the 6th least developed country in the world, they remain really basic. And this situation is made worse by the recent Ebola outbreak as well. So there's virtually no electricity, very little food production, heavy reliance on imports, and access to education remains extremely limited. And 95% of the population survive on less than $2 a day, which is a and also 40% of all children in Liberia experience stunted growth. So growing up in Liberia has its challenges. Children are often forced to work at home to help their parents, and girls are often married off at a really young age. Girls in Liberia face great cultural barriers to attending school, and Mary's Meals really want to support these girls. Our school feeding program started in Liberia in 2006, and we've really found that this assurance of a daily meal in school really encourages those girls to come to school. It encourages their parents to send them to school alongside boys. So that's fantastic. And actually Liberia is our second largest program country that we work in, where we're now providing meals to 144,208 children every school day in Liberia, and we've remained really committed to this work to reach Liberian children in their places of education. So I'm going to move on now, and here you can see a picture of your sponsored school, Fefe Town Public School, and this is located in a place called Clay in Vaughan County, Liberia. And the children at Fefe Town Public School range from grade 1 to 6, and they have 3 permanent classrooms there. There's 147 children attending the school, and there are 82 boys and 65 girls enrolled there. So due to a lack of indoor space, some classes are taught outside in the school grounds, which you'll see in one of the photos that I'll show you in a minute. Fefe Town's pupils are taught by a total of 5 different teachers. The school's water source is a hand pump in the local community, which is just a short distance away from the school. The school also has 2 toilet blocks and 4 cubicles, which are split evenly between boys and girls. The food that we feed at Fefe Town Public School and at all of our schools in Liberia is a vitamin-enriched porridge or rice and peas. This can be supplemented also by food grown in school gardens. So Mary's Meals Liberia it encourages all of the schools in its feeding program to grow a school garden like this, and this gives children the hand-on agricultural experience, and then that food that they grow at the school can be used as ingredients for their daily meals, or it can be sold and the profits can be reinvested back into the school itself. Fefe Town Public School has got a flourishing garden tended by the teachers and the pupils, and they're currently growing cassava and corn in their garden. So I've got a few quotes on the screen here from the school community that you might like to read. I quite like this one in the middle from Nancy. So I volunteer because I want to help our children in the school. The food makes them feel fine and they want to come. Without food, they're not encouraged. And here I'll just share a few photos from the school. This is one of the volunteer cooks here preparing the food. And we've got some other photos of the cooks, the teachers and pupils here, which is lovely to see. Here we have some more children having their meal. And finally, you can see some photos here of the children sitting, learning outdoors. So I wanted to end this talk today by sharing a video with you from our founder, Magnus McFarlane Barrow. So this year is Mary's Meals' 20th birthday. So we've been feeding kids for all of this time because of supporters like you. So I wanted to share this thank you from him to you, which I thought was quite nice.
Thank you so much for coming today, and just for everything that you do for Mary's Meals. 20 years now. It's incredible to think it's been that long since I met that boy, Edward, in Malawi, when he told me about his ambition to have enough food to eat and to be able to go to school one day. You know, and who would have thought then that here we would be 20 years later, over 2 million children eating Mary's Meals every day. It's certainly something worth giving thanks for, you know, and also just to reflect about what we've learned along the way. You know, first of all, we've learned this works. This simple thing works. You know, it transforms lives. We see it immediately when we serve that meal to the child for the first time. And we see it too in the lives of those young adults, so many thousands of them now in different countries, who once ate Mary's Meals at school, whose lives have been transformed, who are becoming the leaders of that change that will one day set them free from dependence on aid and outside charity. So first of all, the simple thing we do, it works in an incredible way. We've learned other things too. You know, we've learned that love reaches everywhere, and this is still a simple work of love. And it reaches some very difficult places, even when you think about today, about where we're working, you know, in war zones like South Sudan, in places of great famine like Madagascar, in places of civil unrest like in Haiti today, places that are really difficult to work, but the places where children are suffering most acutely. That's where we want to be, and it's where we are present today, keeping that promise faithfully every day to those hungry children. And as I look around the world today, this is a time of need unlike any other that I can think of during these 20 years. So many millions of people facing chronic hunger, so many children desperate for Mary's Meals. Just in a few weeks ago, I was in Turkana, northern Kenya, spent one day with a father and son who were herding their goats in this desperate search for water in a village where it hadn't rained now for 2 years. And the father, Ikai, just telling me about how his animals were dying, and his son, his young son, who should have been in primary school, Elar, had dropped out of school, like all the other children in that community, just in their desperate bid to survive every day. He was just helping his father try and keep his animals alive, you know, and therefore his future was already being stolen from him. And he, that young boy, Elar, is just one of hundreds of thousands of children waiting for Mary's Meals. We're ready to go to begin serving meals in those primary schools as soon as we can raise the funds that we require. He's one of millions of children like that around the world, because in all those countries where we're present today, we have schools waiting for us to go forward. So it's quite right that we pause and celebrate and give thanks for these 20 years and especially reflect on what we've learned. But more than that, we need to think about today, that horrible reality for children like Elar, and we need to think about tomorrow. How do we go forward now to that next child waiting? So thank you, you know, for your faithfulness. Those of you who've been walking this journey for so many years now, thank you, all of you, no matter when you joined this family, for your desire to go forward to that next child waiting. You know, let's just go forward with all our might, inviting new people into this family so that we might reach more of those children as soon as possible, so that we might keep our promise this day too. For that, I thank you with all my heart.